Testing, testing. Welcome to Wickerson Studios. My name is Michael Wickerson, and I've finished up with an intro Ghpython course that I've shared a lot of videos to. And what I wanted to do was begin really from the basics, the 1, 2, 3s, before going into Rhino common namespaces. And that's going to begin with Rhinoscriptsyntax, which a lot of people are familiar with. You basically want to go into developer-rhino3d.com. You're going to want to go into your APIs. You can choose from what you want to learn. Of course, this is the big push to learn Rhino Common and possibly C Sharp or C++. But we're going to go into Rhinoscriptsyntax. And at that point, you can kind of discover whatever you want. So if you were adding things, you can see all the things you can add here, add curve. That's going to give you a basic script. And what I wanted to do was at first just bring them into Grasshopper nodes and have them available for people to use, and then also start to apply them and make some interesting scripts with them. This is going to be pretty basic to start. So we can get out of that. You'll see the Rhino window is pretty boring. I think I have just a couple of angles made from planes here. The scripts are going to be dead simple, and I'm going to try and compile these on mostly one script, which will be named after these categories. Or I'll do it in multiple scripts. And so what happens is we'll close this one, and of course I have to run it, close it. That's a little trick with it. And I'm going to go in as a kind of cheat sheet for Rhinoscriptsyntax, Wickerson Studios, subscribe to Patreon, and that's where I'll start doing more detail. And the first section that I wanted to cover today was just sections, selection and inputs, and that's going to cover the Rhinoscript command, get string, get integer, get real, get object, get objects, and point coordinates. And I very rarely use those because I'm working directly in Grasshopper and I don't really need that. But what I'm going to do is just ungroup this section. After going through those scripts and showing you how they work and how they take inputs and take outputs, or sometimes they're written just directly into it, you'll see that each one of the nodes I've just set up the name as rs get string, rs get string again, because I did a little test with it, rs get integer, rs get real, rs get object, rs get objects, and then rs point coordinates. When I'm done that, then we'll go into a second video, which will be on vectors, and I'll cover all of these kind of common Rhinoscript functions that you'd be importing into Python and writing into Python. So this one, if we took a look, you'll see that it's a pretty simple script, and here it is. Just kind of station it there. And it's applying some of the stuff you learned prior to it from the git points and things like that. But in the end, you're trying to get down to here and do the vector create. So that's what that one's doing. And of course, the same thing happens there. We're going to go through and name the first one add point, the next one vector create, and they're all highlighted here on the side. The next one's vector unitize, then vector angle, vector scale, vector create, and vector length, which I still have to do, and I'll finish that up before I do the next video. And then close that one out. And then the next one will be polyline, surface, and geometry, and we'll cover all of these commands from add point all the way through to add sweep 2. Then we'll do transformations, rotate object all the way through mirror object. And then the miscellaneous is pretty common and things that we can start tucking into our Python node and not have to bring in after in a node system in Grasshopper, if that's what you're tending to want to start doing, which is what I want to do. And then line, curve, and surface valuation. Of course, at the same point, we're going to be covering a lot of details with operators and functions, and actually getting into classes as these become more and more elaborate. One thing that's interesting is when you are in here and you're taking a look in here, and you find something you want to use, so I'll just pull this aside, you can see it's going to tell you all these other things that really might relate to what you just learned. Not so much there, I think, hang on, when I go into here, right here. So you've got, if you're taking a look at add curve, you're going to want to probably go into add interp curve and is curve. And what I slowly will do is as I build this function and I start putting into here add curve, which is the one we're working on, or that was vector angle. Where was that one? Add curve was farther up. That's the one we were working on there. Actually, I didn't get there yet. Unitize. Why are my vectors all crazy stuff? Add points. Add points. Add surface points. I wonder why I went into vector. I must have changed one of the. I must have not updated this yet. Okay, so what I have to do is I just have to downsize this list because I don't need all of those. And I just want to make sure that I have the proper form here, that I actually put everything in. Yeah, curve from plane. Okay, curve. So, okay, so that's all right. All I have to do is change these ones to match these ones. So even though it starts with add point, add points, add curve. Sorry for this confusion. Vector create. What I'm going to do is end up going in here and say, okay, well, that was vector create. Create. I thought I already did this, but apparently I didn't. Sorry to waste your time on this, but that's just the nature of the beast. Maybe I didn't hit save after I did it all. So that I'd have to go down and I'd say, okay, we want vector unitize. So what I'm just going to do here is just shorten this list to what I actually need right now, and I'll add the other ones in as I go. So as I plug through these ones and get through all of them, I'll update that list, include all the way through to vector length. And I'll try and apply them. But once again, this one we're going to start, and I did throw a little visualization in here. Let me just take that and put that to disable. We're not going to see much in the Rhino window when looking at these functions. And I don't like to get them all up and running at once because they're trying to run. But let's start with the simplest one, which is get string. And there's the script for it. Pretty basic. You're going to have to import Rhinoscriptsyntax as RS. And I just do a little quick print test, like I just put Wickerson Studios kicks butt, and then I just put that to output just to make sure that when I run the script is running and there's not anything messing up in the node that has nothing to do with that script. And then basically I set A, which is the output. This one I had to set my type hit to string so it actually runs. So I just get my script running, and it's just the RS. And this is what's amazing about this is you can actually, it'll walk you through it. So you hit A, and so this is really basic 101, but you can do it yourself, equals rs dot get string, and you can see it auto completes. Type in your parentheses, it tells you exactly what you need to know. You need a message none, a default string none, and a string 0. So what I did was I said string's kind of interesting because it'll break the word up into single objects. So you can see what happened here. The text is what I've said, message none. I guess I could change this to enter a string, and I better put it into a string for it to read as a string. Enter a string. Okay, so you start getting into this, and we'll hit test again, except I've locked that out, so I got to leave that, and let's just run it again. And of course I've messed this up. Let's test it again. There we go, enter a string, and down here, I believe I'm running, well, I was running this. I thought I was, running this one. So testing it, it's running fine. Enter a string, and I will enter hello Wickerson. Oh, if I'm entering a string that has a space, I better enter it with quotes. So hello Wickerson. And you start to find out all this little tiny stuff. Hit enter, and there you go. Hello Wickerson was selected. Because I entered a string, it didn't default to Wickerson Studios. If I run the script again, and I just hit enter, it's going to default to Wickerson Studios. And you'll see the other thing it does was when I typed it, I can choose any one of these letters in the string, which is the string's letters within that word, and I can just type W, and you see W comes as the output. So pretty simple structure, nothing too hard about it. I'm just going to grab it, and I'm going to hit disable, because I don't want to run it again. And I'm going to go in to close that script. Be very careful to hit OK and close it. And then open the next string and see what you have. And this one is playing off of layers. And this one I probably am going to have to fiddle around with a little bit. We're on layer 1, and this is actually playing off of what the Rhino layers are in your file. So if you had things set to different layers, it's pretty simple. Setting A to a Rhino script current layer blank, and then A will become get string layer to set current A, because A is the current layer. And then if A is true, so you actually have it set to a layer, then the current layer will be outputted to A. So you can see it says layer A here, but if I click down here to 3 and then I run the script, it's going to say what layer on you are. I hit enter and it'll jump over to layer 3. So that's a pretty simple little tool. I don't know how often I'm going to use that because I really avoid the Rhino window as much as possible. It's a good tool to know what's going on. Hit OK to close it. Zoom back out of it if you have this file. And obviously I have to exit like that, and that'll close it. And then just make sure your command line isn't running when you're trying to do things. So I'm going to disable that, and we're going to go down to the next function, which is get integer. So we're just going to jump into there. We're going to hit enable. We're going to take a look at what that script looks like. I'm probably going to downside my layers here because they don't matter. I'm not really looking at my Rhino windows, so I make that less of a priority. I do want to see my Python. editor. And what I have here is I've just inputted a number from now on because I'm dealing in integers. So to test the script, you can see I've already got it running. I'm going to hit enter so it at least runs. And just to test that the runs, I've just got 1 through 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. And so that's testing as an output. And I just hit print x before the function actually runs. And then the function is quite simple. A equals Rhinoscript get integer. You'll need a message. So I typed in get an integer. You can type in anything you want. The number is a default number that it will turn into if I don't enter anything. So you can see when I wrote that, it's saying I'm going to default to 1, 2, 3, and I just plug that in there. And it says a minimum maximum. I put these numbers on just because I could relate those to colors. But there's no reason I couldn't set this at 100 and then hit test. And as long as my number, if I type in 23 and hit enter, it's going to, it took that number, but I thought there was actually a minimum on it. And I'm curious why that one didn't run as a minimum. Let me try that again, because the minimum maximum that I want to set should take effect, and I'm wondering why that didn't. Let me type in 122, enter, and it changed over to 122. But I thought the minimum worked that way. So what we can do is leave this, and we can just go in here, and we could take a look at the details. Rhinoscript get integer parentheses, and let's see what it tells us what's going on. And you can find the answers here, but once again, the better, quicker answer is to go into here, and then I think it was adding integer, integer, oh, it was get integer, and so let's just do that one, and let's see what it says about that. So basically, it says, okay, that's the number, the minimum, the number none, minimum. It says the minimum number optional, the minimum allowable value, and the maximum allowable value, which is strange because it's still outputted less than 100 when I type that in. So I'm a little curious why that ran that way. Anyway, they use an example of color and why you want to use it, entering an RGB color value and then using the filter of color over the RGB, which should make sense as we get a little farther down. We'll jump back into Rhino. And yeah, I'm just curious why that 100 ran when I ran it less than. Maybe now it's working. I don't know. Oh, because I got this file. So you don't want to leave anything hanging there because then it's going to script your script. So let's try it again and just type in 12 and enter, and it didn't work. So that was good. So it took effect. I guess I was still running the old script. So now it won't enter it because it's under 100. But if I typed in 112. That's within the range of what I want. Hit enter, and there you go. It runs at 112, and my script is running. So let's just hit enter, OK on that. And of course, hitting OK, it applies it. So just hit enter to leave it, or escape to leave it, and then you can get out of that script. So that's the trouble with having too many Python scripts open in Grasshopper, not tucked into one Python script editor. So it's kind of dancing around on your campus trying to do everything. So we're going to disable that one. The next one's a get real, and we definitely can go in here and enable and open that file and see what it is. And get real is very similar to what we just did, is get integer, but it's setting up the real number, and it's going to pull out a real number as opposed to adding integer. So you can run that. It'll say pick a number. If you don't enter anything, it'll default to 77, I believe. At least it should. Let me test again and run it. Well, let's just try 122, which is outside of range. Let's try 22, which is in range, and there you go, it ran. I had to pick a number between 3 and 120 because those were my minimum maximums. So okay, and we have to exit that again, which should default. Maybe I'll just stay with 12 because that's between 3, and that works. And I should have been able to get out of that 12, enter, and I should be able to leave and put that on disable, and we're out. And then we'll go down to the next one. And we're actually almost done this. So there's 3 more very simple ones. The other one's a get object, which is actually pretty fun. Let's take that and hit enable. It's saying pick a surface. So I'm going to have to just exit that because I don't have a surface or curve to pick. And the reason, and you can see crashed out because of it. So as I load this up and you see what's happening in the script, it's saying import run your script X just to test it. So I'm testing that as well. I've got a crash here. There's a couple ways of doing this. You can do it in the top way, the bottom way. So basically I say get object, pick a surface or curve or surface, and then I use an RS filter curve with this straight line, and then RS filter surface. And so long as I'm grabbing those, so if I grab this curve, that was my first object, and then I go and I grab a surface, I can grab either one of those, and I've got it on a weird layer now because it's coming up blue. But now if I run the script test, it's going to say pick a curve or a surface, and boom, it's say there's your object identifier. You picked a planar curve, and so it picked an object in doing so. Now you can deactivate this, and you can write the script the exact same way as rs get object, pick an object, and then if a, then print the object identifier in a, which would do that. I still have to output a would be outputted because that's what it's listed as the output. So you can take the quotes off of here. You can take this quote off of here and go back, boom, 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 and and quote this one out after this. I guess, bump, 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 bump. Actually, it's interesting that it's pulled out. We can run it again, pick an object, and there you go. And now I picked an untrimmed surface, and now we're running the top one, which runs just as well. So they showed a couple examples on that. Once again, these are the examples that are coming out of going into this and typing in whatever you want. What I like to do is I've got a hypertext cheat sheet that I keep jumping to, and it shows me the main ones. And I pulled that out of the University of Michigan. So I'm learning the most key basics before I go deeper into all of this. And of course, this is going to build the whole language up in my head for Rhino Common. And I hope this is helpful to people. So I'm going to hit OK. And of course, I have to pick another object to get out of there, and it's gone. Now I can quote. I just think it's interesting. It runs whenever you touch anything. I'm sure I can fix that. The latest one, the next one is objects. So what you'll see here is grab all of these. Actually, I want to grab all of them. Let's grab them all, and let's just take them to enable. Let's take a look at the quote. So all I did here was get objects, and of course I had to make a list, and then I had to append that list with ID. Now I used ID, but in the end I called A was the list, so I could just use ID as the identifier instead of I or J or K or whatever as it goes through the objects. So if I run the script, it's going to say pick some objects. I pick this one, and I pick this one. As long as you're done picking all the objects, you can hit enter, and then you'll see your objects. Now what happened? Let me try that again. Pick some surface. Oh, because this one's filters only surfaces. Let's exit it, and let's just do a quick copy and just slide this one over with an Alt tap. Oops, I just left that. It should be copying. No, that's interesting. Let me copy up here. You know what? I'll just make another one. I'm having trouble grabbing that. Should get a plus. There we go. So I got 2 now. So now I'm going to run my script. It's going to say pick some surfaces. Pick 2 of them. Hit enter. And there you go. You've got 2 object identifiers, and you have 2 untrimmed surfaces. So a nice way to start interfacing. But keep in mind that the filter, the RS filter, which is another function we want to get into using, is already set to surface. And I just called that objects. I guess I could have called it anything, object IDs, because that's the one that came out of the example of when I was looking at a Rhinoscriptsyntax on the Rhino developer. So, you just got to do this. You got to walk through these exercises. It's like practicing scales when you're learning piano and riffs when you're on a guitar. So enough said, pick some surfaces, exit, and there we go. We're gone, and I can take these and tuck them away. We're almost done this section. The last one's quite simple. Let's go in here, and it's called point coordinates. Let's enable, and we're just going to grab all this junk, and we're going to tuck that away. We have to exit, and the script's not running yet. Let's just grab some points, and you can grab whatever points you want. But this one is actually point coordinates, so it doesn't really allow me to pick more than one. So we'll go into here, and we will slide it over here. You'll see the script is pretty simple. A is set to get objects as select point, and the filter is points. And then, of course, point is going to be RS point coordinates, which just gives you the coordinates of 1 point. And so for a point, if it's selected, it will output that point. So, and as A. So as I run it, it's going to say select a point. I can pick this point, and boom, it just told me the exact coordinates where that is. So if I took this point and I ran it again, it's going to ask me to select a point. I hit it, and there it is. So what I'm going to do now is I just put another point on there. I'll move this one up if you remember what it was. And now I can go back in, and I'm sure because I don't have it on grid snap, that's going to be a decimal point for sure. And no, it stayed pretty much moving where it was moving. That's weird. Let me run that again. See if I can get an odd. I thought the number would be even odder. Anyway, that's it. Pretty simple. Select a point to exit it. Zoom out. Take it all to disable. And things will get a lot more interesting. So I'm going to grab all these all the way up to this, and I'm just going to hit group, and we're done with that one. And now we'll go in and we'll take a look at vectors. And the first one we do is adding add point, and then we'll do create vector, and then I'll do create vector unitized, and then I'll show you how to do vector angle, and then I'll finish up with the last 3, which are pretty simple. vector scale, vector create, vector length. And once you make these functions, you might even want to take them and tuck them up here under a Python node for yourself, just Python, or you might want to take them and put them into a snipping tool, which I've downloaded a plugin. And I honestly can't tell you what plugin gave me manages the Grasshopper snippets, but I'm sure if you typed it in online, you'd find out where it is. It gives you a bit of a trash bag here, and then you can file things under Python and then quickly grab whatever you put in there and actually see the visuals on what actually is in there, which is kind of nice. Some of the time, not all the time. If it's too crazy, you won't do it. This surface normal one is pretty nice. I think this one, no, this one gives me a nice example of what I use. Anyway, so I'm trying to just take the knowledge I have in Grasshopper and drop that back into Python as best I can by using Rhino Developer. It's a great start. I've gone far enough into C#, but now I realize I just have to have it at the tip of my tongue, tip of my fingers, be able to Rhinoscriptsyntax whenever I can, and slowly jump into the namespaces under Rhino geometry, being one of them. Rhino, there's a whole bunch of them. But that's something we'll start with, and this should be a nice transition into it. Basically, you're just kind of pulling up nodes out of Grasshopper, but you're doing it a way out of a Python node that has it scripted inside. So the best thing to do is try and mimic these nodes, try and create them in Python. So as these things do things, realize they are just kind of tiny plugins that they've made for you, and then they get more and more complex as you jump into all these crazy plugins that you can get online. And it's making sense, and it will come with time, and it will make more sense to you. So once again, thanks for watching. That was a longer video, but I hope it gets people set that this is how Rhinoscriptsyntax starts to process in some of our minds, at least mine. Thanks for watching.